Okay, all right, hey, let's get started. So, today we're going to be talking about emotional control and response plans, all right? At the end of the day, what I want you to be able to take away from today is that you can't always control what happens, but you can control how you respond to it, all right? What is today about? You have to respond, do not react, all right? Your reaction is just whatever naturally you want to do. A response is something you have control over that you do on purpose with purpose, like we've talked about before. You want to be doing things on purpose with purpose, so do that as often as possible. All right? In order to do that, you have to be able to recognize the emotional states that you are in during competition. All right? You need to build a plan to stay composed under stress, and then practice that discipline so when emotions run high, you have something to go to. Okay? To begin with, a little story for you. So I went to Olathe East. Most of you guys probably knew that. Some of you guys probably didn't. And I was lucky enough to play varsity as a sophomore, right? I was the only non-senior, right, on the staff that time, okay? It was a really fun opportunity. I got to basically be the fourth starter. It was a bunch of fun, right? I had a bunch of upperclassmen that I could lean on, when things got difficult. They also would save my back whenever I struggled. The issue came the next year, right? All of a sudden, I was the only pitcher returning on varsity, okay? The expectations that I put on myself and that I felt like everybody else had on me by being that only returner became way too big, okay? One walk turned into big innings over and over and over for my entire junior year and my entire senior year, right? Has anybody been in a situation like that where one walk leads to 5 runs and it feels like it happened like that, right? Yeah? And unfortunately, that was me for the longest time. And I was lucky enough to even get a college offer because of how bad I was. I had a very good sophomore year, and then I struggled my junior and my senior year. Things changed once I got to college. Luckily enough, I was able to redshirt for a year, and so I had a year to kind of figure my stuff out, right? To figure myself out, figure out what type of pitcher I needed to be. But really, everything changed once we got a new pitching coach, okay? His name's Blake McFadden, right? He's now the head coach at Dartmouth, okay? And I was lucky enough to have him as my pitching coach when I was at Missouri Western. But one of the big things that he instilled in me was, first of all, he made me believe in myself. He made me reflect on the work that I was putting in and reflect on the results that I was getting and made it so that I didn't doubt myself anymore, right? He's like, there's not a lefty on this team that can have success against you. There's not a lefty in this country that can have success against you. He's like, I don't care if it was a major leaguer, right? If you were on your game, you'd be able to be successful, right? And he said that often enough that I started to believe it, okay? That was important, but the more important aspect was he had this so what mentality. So no matter the situation in a game, you strike out a guy, you're all pumped about yourself, walking around doing your K-strut, getting ready to get back on the dugout. You'd hear from the dugout, so what? Right? You give up a hit, give up a couple runs. You're jogging behind home plate and you're all pissed about the mistake that you made. As soon as you step back on that mound, you'd hear from the dugout, so what? Okay? Because at the end of the day, he wanted to remind me and every other pitcher on our staff consistently that whatever just happened does not matter anymore. Good does not matter. Bad does not matter. Your opportunity is in the next step that you take. Okay? If you just struck a guy out, so what? Who cares? Next pitch. Okay? You just walked a guy, you just gave up a home run, you just did whatever, so what? The team needs you now. Right? And that mentality really changed things for me. Right? It didn't make one walk turn into a big inning. Okay? It allowed me to figure out where the space was between the stimulus and response. All right? And I was able to choose how I decided to feel about certain situations. It wasn't one walk happened, then, oh no, I'm in this situation that I'm not prepared for and I don't believe in myself and everybody's looking at me and I'm letting everybody down. Next thing you know, 5 runs. I give up 5 runs and I'm getting taken out of the game. It was, oh, I made one bad pitch. Let me, snuff that right then and then move on to the next one, okay? And that mentality changed a lot for me. So that space that we can find in between that stimulus and response is a game changer, okay? It created a space for me mentally where I could release the negative emotion, the doubt that I had about myself, and refocus on the next pitch. Okay. Now, taking that into some key concepts for today. Okay. One of the things that's important is that E plus R equals O. All right. Has anybody ever seen that before? Anything like that? No? So that is event plus response equals outcome. Okay? Think about it this way. The event in and of itself. So walking a guy does not give up a run. Unless the bases are already loaded, right? But walking a guy, just the one walk, does not do anything. But it's how you respond to that that kind of makes or breaks your outing or your inning. Does that make sense? Think about it in life as well. Like if you get dealt a bad hand just for a given circumstance, for one day, you have one rough day, that doesn't make your week. That doesn't make your month. That doesn't make your year, okay? But how you respond to it does, okay? So being able to take a step back from that, right? Figure out, okay, hey, that event that happened to me, I do not have to allow that to affect anything else down the line. What's more important is how I respond, what I do next, okay? So understand that you have an ownership in the outcome, okay? Right? A loss, for example, you losing. It could be just a loss, right? It could just be, oh, we lost. Now I'm not going to learn anything from it and I can move on. Or it could be something that shows you exactly what you need to work on. So you come back with more eagerness, end up improving, and then you end up becoming better for it. So then all of a sudden you took ownership over the outcome, right? The event was its own. It had no bearing on anything. It was its own. You chose your response and therefore you were able to control the outcome. Does that make sense? You have no control over the event, but you do have control over your response. Okay? The next thing is your signal lights. This is an easy way for you to check in with yourself when you're talking about your emotions, emotional control. Okay, green, yellow, and red. We'll talk about those more in detail, but for now, I want you to have an understanding of exactly what signal lights are. Okay? Now, a release routine. So that's basically, we'll talk again more in detail. That's a physical cue, a deep breath, and then a verbal reset. And then your refocus routine, which is going to be a thought, basically a deep breath on a focal point, and then a thought, image, or feeling that we remind ourselves to get locked back in. Okay? But moving on to our discussion for the day. Before we talk more in detail about how we're going to use some of these tools to actually implement into our current mental development, right, our mental performance, let's talk about when do emotions take over your game. Let's think about it for a little bit, and then if you guys want to share, feel free. Go ahead, Connor. When people make errors, very good, okay? So again, what I like to think about when we're talking about this, so that is an event, right? Our response, right, dictates the outcome. One thing that I was taught very early on, and I was actually taught by a teammate who did this to me, is whenever I made an error, he would turn to me and say, hey, I'm going to need you on the next play. I'm going to get you another ground ball. And then all of a sudden for me, it made me feel better. Oh my goodness, even though I made a mistake in front of my whole team, right? The pitcher who I just ruined the inning for still believes in me. Made a big deal for me. So I started trying to do that to other people, right? So then all of a sudden you get to decide whether or not, okay, hey, this error actually becomes an opportunity for us to come together as a team. Does that make sense? So, now I'm not saying that's easy, right? But it could be something that you can work towards, okay? What about anybody else? Any other times that emotions? Yeah, go for it. Umpires, the worst. They all are blind and they all suck and they all have it out for you, right? That's the way that I feel sometimes, right? It happens all the time. But again, it's a choice that you have to make. And we're not saying it's easy, right? But we have to become aware of these things, of knowing when do our emotions take over. And then we'll talk about some tools today about how we can kind of reframe some of those things. Ben, you had your hand raised? Oh, that's brutal too. I hate that. Especially when they're like getting too personal with it. Not fun at all. Yes, definitely not ideal. Anybody else have anything? Go for it. When your teammates don't give effort, that's extremely frustrating, right? When it seems like you're the only one who's trying, makes it tough. Okay. Anybody else? We'll move on. What is your red light signal? So think about the worst of the worst emotions that you're having during a game, where you're feeling like I'm giving up, right? There's no way that I can overcome this. What does that feel like, right? What's your red light signal? What does that actually look like? What does that feel like to tell you that, oh, it's out of control? Yeah? You get a really strong urge to throw your glove. Okay, good. So you feel it like welling up inside of you almost. Okay. Anybody else? For me, I would always feel like I just wanted to be anywhere but there, right? I'd be on the mound and I'm like, I don't ever want to play baseball again. Just get me off the mound, right? That was mine. I knew that, it's over, right? Try again next game. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, where all of a sudden, like, you're like thinking that she's disappointed in you potentially, right? Where you start thinking about other people's opinions opposed to the given moment, right? That's a sure sign of distraction. Anybody else have anything? Christian? Just like little twitches. You can almost like feel it's like. Yeah, I feel off balance almost. Really? Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Or almost like you're getting out of your head and your body's just like freaking out. Is that how you kind of describe it? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Anybody else? No? Cool. Now, thinking about different ways that you've overcome those moments so far, or if you haven't, think about ways that you potentially can. We don't necessarily need to answer this unless you feel like you want to share, because we're going to give you a couple tools about how to do this a little bit more moving forward. But what do you think you could do to kind of reset faster in those moments? That's a good one, right? Reminding you that, hey, even though I'm frustrated at them in those moments, I also sometimes will make errors. Right? Anybody else? That's a great one. Yes. Yeah. Being able to stay in control, right? That's a good way to center yourself. Anybody else have any ideas? So all of those are really good options, but what I really like thinking about is when it comes to actually making this a habit is actually writing down a plan, right? Of actually having a plan of attack for when your plan of attack does not go to plan, right? Okay? So that's kind of what we'll talk about a little bit more, okay? So to begin with, let's do an E plus R equals O challenge, all right? I want you to think about 3 recent events that have frustrated you, your life or sport. Doesn't have to just be sport, doesn't just have to be your life. All right, take a little bit of time if you want to bring your phone out or write them down on a piece of paper, feel free. 3 recent events that have frustrated you. Just brainstorm with that for a little bit. Now that you have those 3 events, I want you to think about how you reacted, right? And try to brainstorm a way that you could have responded better. Key words there, right? Your natural reaction, right, is not an intentional response, okay? Think about your natural reaction versus your response. I'll give an example real quick. So one of the things that really frustrated me is we recently have done a kitchen renovation, and as part of that, we're doing a lot of the work our own, trying to put it back together. And there was this one drawer in particular that I was putting in that no matter how I tried it, it just was not cooperating. No matter what I did, I'd level it, I'd like triple, double check, how it was supposed to, but it just was not cooperating. No matter what I tried, no matter what I did, and I'd get it up and then have to take it back down and start over. And I had to do that like 3 or 4 times. And the issue is that the way that I reacted is then when people would come to try to help me, I responded with that frustration I was feeling. Right? I was like, no, I'm fine. Right? When they could tell I wasn't, they were just trying to help, see if they could support me a little bit. Right? But I let my reaction get the best of me in that moment. Right? And instead, it would have been better for me to take a step back and actually be like, yeah, you know what, I probably could use a little bit of help because I've messed this up 4 times in a row. Right? But instead, I allowed myself to get frustrated. Okay? But being able to take a step back from that and say, hey, how could I have responded better? The nice thing is last week I was frustrated about a similar situation. This time it was a door, or it was it was a different type of drawer. But drawers have been my nemesis for the last couple weeks. But then all of a sudden I was able to take a step back from the moment and ask for some help. We brainstormed a better solution, and we were able to figure it out together. And I did not react out of frustration. I was able to respond in a much more intelligent way. Does that make sense? Okay. Does anybody have any examples that they're thinking of? Oh. Anybody, anything that's frustrated you, how you reacted, and how you think you could have responded better? If not, no big deal. Just wanted to leave it open if anybody wanted to talk about anything. All right, we'll move on. So hey, now if you don't have your phone, go grab it. If you don't have it with you, go grab it. If you do have it, get it out. Because this is extremely important. I want you to have this language to be on the same page with me about, okay? So that we can constantly have this same conversation here, okay? First of all, to begin with, I want you to be able to identify and label your green, yellow, and red lights, okay? And the way that we're going to do that is with our BFS, okay? Your BFS stands for three things. It's your body language, your focus, and your self-talk, okay? So when things are green, when they're going good, when you're on cruise control, what does your body language, focus, and self-talk look like? All right, write that down. Do the same thing for yellow. Yellow is distracted, all right? It's not quite like you cannot, return from it, right? It's not quite that you've reached the point of no return, but you're distracted. You're not focusing on the things that you should, right? Maybe the opponent's chirping is getting to you a little bit too much, right? Maybe you're worrying about what other people are thinking about how you're performing. You're not focusing on the task at hand. You're just a little distracted. You're not entirely out of it, but you're distracted. What does your body language, focus, and self-talk look like? And finally, let's think about your red light. Okay, this is the point where everybody in the stadium knows that you are done for. Right? If you're on the mound, that's when everybody's like, why are they not warming somebody up yet? He's done, right? We need to get him out of here. Or you're just begging for something to go your way, right? You're no longer in the moment. You're just trying to get out of there. Okay? Same thing on the batter's box where you're just swinging at whatever, trying to get your AB over with. Okay? What does that look like? What does your body language, focus, and self-talk look like when you're defeated? Now we're going to go more in detail about a refocus and a release routine. In my opinion, and the way that I teach it, is a refocus routine is a little bit more relaxed, right? It's when you just need to get locked back in a little bit. It's not necessarily anything too big. More times than not, it's basically just when you're in a yellow signal or signal light. Okay, but a release routine is when you're in a red and you're trying to rectify your outing. You're trying to save your game, okay? You're trying to get yourself all the way from defeated back locked in. So that's going to require both a release routine to get rid of that negative emotion and then a refocus routine on top of it to get yourself locked back in. Okay? So the way that I teach it, yellow is going to be refocus only. You just lock yourself back in, focusing on the right things, and you're going to be good to go. But with a red light, you need to have a release routine, get rid of that, and then a refocus routine. But now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through what each of those look like. So as we're doing this, I want you to kind of develop your own or start brainstorming your own. Okay, all right? We're going to start with a release routine. This is the one that is the big one. Okay, when you are defeated, what do you have to do when something terrible happens? You give up a grand slam, right? You give up the lead. You strike out for the 5th time in a row, right? Something extremely negative. Or the winning runs on second base and you struggle, okay? You need to do something physical. So physical association. Once you guys have talked about this, you'll probably start noticing it. One of the things that you see a lot of the time is Aaron Judge specifically. When he makes a bad swing, he'll pick up some dirt or some turf, hold it in his hands, and then throw it away. He has a physical association with that negative emotion, right? For me, I used to always take my hat off, okay? And I'd have a physical association where I am not going to put my hat back on until I'm ready to be a pitcher again. All right? For now, I'm just Kellen, and I'm Kellen who's pissed off standing on the mound. All right? I'm not a pitcher. I'm just pissed off Kellen standing on the mound. Okay? Zach Sorensen, who we've talked about before, his thing is he used to always imagine defensively whenever he made an error, right, that it wasn't him, it's because he has a little guy in his glove that made the error for him. So his big thing is he would take that little guy out of his glove and drop him down a drain. He played on the old school AstroTurf fields when he was at Wichita State. So they actually had drains on the field. You guys don't even know anything about that, but they used to actually have drains on the fields. And so he'd drop that guy down the drain right when he was at shortstop. That was his physical association. He'd be like, get out of here, right? The next step is a deep breath on a focal point, okay? Your focal point needs to be something that's going to be present at every game, every stadium, every field you're ever going to play on. It needs to be a foul pole. It needs to be a center field wall. It needs to be a scoreboard, right? It needs to be a part of the dugout, right? For me, it was always the top of the scoreboard. No matter what the scoreboard was, a lot of the time there'd be clocks right up there, and I'd look at that, okay? But that was mine. For a hitter, it could be a spot on your bat, it could be a spot on your glove, or even as a pitcher, it could be the mound, all right, the rubber. One thing that I'd caution about that, though, is understand how you looking at your focal point, how that body language presents itself, right? If your focal point is let me stare here, then okay, you give up a home run and you're just going to stand like this, right? Right? That looks defeated. That looks bad, right? That makes the other team think like, oh, we got him now. Makes your coach think, oh, he doesn't believe in himself at all. Even if you're trying to do the right thing to get yourself locked back in. So you got to be cautious of that, okay? That's why I always pick the scoreboard because, yeah, I could just stare at the scoreboard for a little bit. But also if anybody's like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, oh, yeah, I'm just checking the situation, right? It's an easy way to do that. Same thing with a foul pole or a flag pole, anything like that, okay? Then finally, you're going to finish up with a verbal trigger, okay? Something to get you locked back in, okay? It could be something simple. It could be something that your coach said that you like it. Like that so what next pitch mentality that my coach had when I was in college. It could be flush it, forget about it, right? And then make the next best decision. It could be that. It could be something as simple as just saying, hey, this is my release routine, so I'm going to release, all right? Or it could be a recover. It could be a single sentence, a single thought, right? Whatever it needs to be in order to get yourself locked back in. So for me personally, when I went through my release routine, it looked something like this. I had a bad pitch location. I went 3-0. I gave up a hit that I really didn't want to. It would be me taking my hat off. Big deep breath. I'd stare at my focal point, which was the scoreboard, all right? And I actually had my verbal trigger written on my hat, right? So for me, my verbal trigger was go to the well once more. It's something that I read that Muhammad Ali's corner man used to say to him, right, when he was fighting in the ring, okay? And I really liked it because, the mentality of digging deep, okay? The mentality of just going one more time, right? Each pitch is its own thing. You don't need to get all the water out of the well in one trip. Just go to the well once more. Get one bucket full, take it with you, okay? Just each time, dig deep. All right, so I like that when I had it written on the bottom of my hat, so it was nice. I'd be able to sit there, stare at that, and get myself locked back in, and go, okay? So I want you to write down all those steps. Figure out exactly what you want. What is your physical thing? What is your deep breath on a focal point? And what is your verbal trigger? All right, for those of you that still play multiple positions, I'd encourage you to have one for when you're hitting, one for when you're pitching, and one for when you're in the field, okay? Because they should be different things, unless somehow you can find a statement or a process that works universally, okay? When do you need this? Like I said earlier, when you're in that red light state, okay, that signal light when you're basically defeated. When, okay, if I don't do anything now, my outing is over, my inning is over, my appearance is over, I need to lock back in. I need to fix this, okay? Red light for sure, and then also for a lingering yellow. So a yellow light that you try just a refocus routine, but it's still, dragging on you, right? You still feel it, it's not letting go, then maybe you need, that release routine. Refocus routine, on the other hand, this is a lot shorter. Okay? You're going to have a deep breath on a focal point. Then you're going to have a final TIFF, all right? Your TIFF is a thought, image, or feeling, all right? And it's something to just kind of get you back in, locking in on the right moment, all right? It could be a thought, which is just the thinking about the sense of accomplishment that you're going to feel when you've been successful, right? It could be you imagining an image, right? It could be the image of how confident you'll feel after making it out, how confident you'll feel afterwards. Imagine what it's going to feel like. And then finally, that feeling of what is it going to be like when we work and we're successful and we get the result that we're looking for. Just feeling what that feeling is going to feel like, right? Any of those three are going to get you locked back in the current moment. They're going to remind you of exactly what is about to happen and what your expectation should be, okay? To kind of get you locked back in, all right? So that full routine, when do you need this? Again, this is more just going to be after a release. So if you just did the red light routine, move on to your refocus. Or maybe all this is all you need for a yellow. All right? But at the end of the day, running through this entire process is a good thing to practice. All right? The reason for that is everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Has everybody heard that one before? All right? Classic Mike Tyson quote. Right? The thing that I have about that, though, is unless you've already developed a plan for what to do when you get punched in the face, right? Then you just stick to the script, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to get punched in the face, whether it's batting, pitching, whatever. Baseball is a game of failure. It's one of the hardest things in any sport, right? The hardest things you'll ever have to do in any sport, all right? So having a plan of what to do and what to go to when you begin to struggle is a very smart move. All right, I encourage everybody to not only develop a plan, but begin to practice it. All right? So practice your routines. Practice what it feels like to feel a little distracted, and then do your refocus routine. All right? Just a deep breath and your final thought, image, or feeling. Okay? Remind yourself of what it feels like to be entirely distracted. Imagine what it feels like to go through that terrible result that you do not want to see, and then lock yourself back in by going through a complete release routine, then a refocus routine. Right? And actually practice that, okay? Whether it's when frustrations arise during practice, frustrations arise during training, or what have you, right? Practice it, or practice it just on your own, okay? But the reason for that is at the end of the day, the best athletes, they don't avoid the pressure, they manage it. They figure out how to deal with it. They figure out how to welcome it, right? If anything, it locks them back in. Emotional control is going to keep your skills available when it matters. All right? At the end of the day, a coach doesn't care how good you do when everything's going your way. Right? That really doesn't matter. Right? Everybody does pretty well when things are going their way. But, when things get tough, what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to respond? Are you going to be able to handle it? Are you going to be able to be the guy that they can still rely on or not? Okay? And at the end of the day, you need to train those response routines, right? The release and the refocus routines until they become automatic. Because unless you practice them, right, when the moment happens and you are frustrated, you're not going to go to it, right? You have to practice it. You have to look for opportunities to try it, okay? All right. So let's talk a little bit about noticing it in action.
Having a final thought or a final image that you say or see before that pitch, and then having a release when you get to that. And the deep breath is really the life jacket of a baseball player. It helps them as a part of their routine to stay in the present moment, slow themselves down, and to really play one pitch at a time. You can't just expect them to use the deep breath in battle. You've got to practice it every day. Practice it in the bullpen, practice it in the batting cage. So when they get out into the game, they've done it 100,000 times. It's ingrained in them, part of their process.
Let's watch this other video too.
The release must be practiced. The release is something that you'll see Brett Huber step off the mound, go to the left field foul pole, take a deep breath, get back in control of himself, play that next pitch. When do you go to the release? You go to the release when you recognize you got red lights. You release them by doing something physical, like going to a foul pole and taking a breath. Or as a hitter, stepping out, putting the bat under your arms, under your batting gloves, or cleaning out the batter's box. Do something physical to help you release the mental and get back into the present.
Perfect. So one thing I want you to pay attention to is now that you've kind of talked about these things, especially when you're watching Major League Baseball or any other professional sport, is you can actually start to notice when you see people going through these. Like naturally, because I've taught this for so long, like when I see somebody pick something up and do something physical or take a second where they set their bat down and they undo their batting gloves and redo them, right? I know why they're doing that, whether or not they know they're doing that on purpose or not, right? At the professional level, a lot of them do have mental performance coaches that they've worked with, or that people who've come into the organization or actually work for the organization that have kind of helped them teach these things, right? But I encourage you to start looking for them, all right? And seeing different ways that different people, right, like respond and how they lock themselves back in. One of the things, Brian Cain worked really closely with Corbin Burns and helped him develop a lot of his routines. So there is a lot of information out there. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about habits and those kind of things. But if you guys want to jump ahead and look some of that up, if you look at Brian Cain, Corbin Burns, or Corbin Burns mental performance, you'll kind of see some of those information. But it's cool to see like that high level, that high caliber of a pitcher, you know, actually using these routines, you know, on the biggest stage, okay? Seeing how he handles things. But at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, you can't always control the event, but you can control your response. Your reaction determines your result, all right? Your response determines the outcome, okay? Before next session, I want you to think about one red light trigger, right, that you have in your life and how you want to handle it better, okay? And then also begin to plan your refocus and your release routines, right? And think about what they would actually look like, okay? During your process, during a game, during a practice, during training, okay? And actually figure out a way to practice them, okay? Make them habit, all right? Anybody have any questions? Nope. All right. Good stuff today. All done. Four.
That one is?